Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Welcome back to the show. Great to have you here on our Total Wellness Tuesday, where we will be diving headfirst into the 4 ways that heavy metals can disrupt your hormones. So the sneaky thing about heavy metals are that we're not typically seeing them when we are absorbing them into our body. I'll give you the different ways that we are exposed to them on a daily basis or near daily basis and how they can start to build up in our body. I'll also give you ways to test them if you choose to, how to remove them from the body, and just be more diligent overall. The goal is always to teach you the knowledge that you need to keep yourself healthy and safe, to also help your family members as well. That's such a big thing. Not everybody in your family is interested or willing to study the things that you are, that's willing to take their health and their health knowledge to that next level. But the nice thing is if we have one person in every family that's really dedicated to learning more about health, natural health, because they certainly don't teach this in school, they're not going to teach it to you in the media. So how can you learn it? Well, reading good books, listening to podcasts, really absorbing the material that seems to speak to you is a great way to do that. And obviously, you want to do it over time because what you learn today hopefully will build off of the knowledge you had before, and then it's going to allow you then to take your overall knowledge to that next level next month and next year and the year after that, because it begins to compound. We begin to make connections in new ways. That's one of the great things I think about really diving into health. Like if you are a health practitioner, you're a health coach, or you're just someone that's interested in learning more about your health, after you've been really looking and understanding and studying it for, I would say, about 3 years, you start to just make these really amazing connections. And it's not because I think that, all of a sudden you just, you read something brand new and it's actually learning and looking at things from different angles. A lot of times what I'm studying and researching are things that I do already know. But when I read a different book or new research, I'm able to see it from a slightly different angle. And then that angle allows me to make the connection, like I'm doing today, between how heavy metals could actually affect your hormones. So let's say you have higher levels of estrogen, like we'll be talking about tomorrow. Or let's say you have low levels of cortisol or high levels of cortisol, or you have high levels of anxiety. Why would that be? Well, if you have high levels of anxiety, you might have low levels of GABA, which is a neurotransmitter, and you might have high levels of a stress hormone called cortisol, and that high level of cortisol might be coming from heavy metals. So now, all of a sudden, we have this person with anxiety, right? A mood-based issue that we think just happens in the brain, but it doesn't. It happens with the nervous system. And we now see on a neurotransmitter test this person has low levels of GABA. And we see in a hormone test that they have high levels of cortisol and they have high levels of heavy metals. Like, okay, well, what do? Do we just give the person GABA? No, right? Do we just give them an anti-anxiety? Well, that's up to the person. It's not me to tell them to take a medication or not. Maybe they do in the short term, but not in the long term. Again, that's up to the individual. My job is to support people. That's really my job. Whatever decision you want to make is fantastic. That's why when people try to paint me into a corner of, he believes in this, he believes in that. No. I only believe in the truth. That's it. I only care about the truth. I have no dogma. I don't have a hard line in the sand. There's no stance on anything that I'm not opening my mind to. Because at the end of the day, I'm trying to move the natural health movement forward, and I'm including everybody. Now, if you have a really dogmatic stand about a diet or a supplement or whatever it might be, and you think it's one for all, like everybody needs to be doing this, well, I certainly might call that out simply because it's not the truth, right? It's not the truth. Now, if you have a good foundational protocol, that can be the truth for everyone. Like everyone needs a certain level of vitamin A, and everyone needs a certain level of vitamin D, and everybody needs a certain level of vitamin C. Like those are all truths. And the more research that you do, the more you see that, well, if you have those proper levels, that helps to boost your immune system. It helps to decrease cancer. It helps, like you just can see, that's at a foundational level. But now you say, okay, I believe everybody needs to take 10 grams of vitamin C a day. Well, I'm going to call you out on that because I'll say, yeah, if you have some type of bacterial or viral or some type of overload in the body or detox is broken down, sure, you might do 10 grams of vitamin C for a week, right? Like that, or to biotolerance. But you're not going to do that every day of your life. And if someone's telling you to do that every day of your life, well, now they're talking about megadosing vitamin C, and it's probably going to cause issues in other areas, right? So supplementation is good. You'll most likely be a healthier human being with supplementation, as long as it's good, healthy, functional medicine supplements. But when you start doing megadose as well, that's when we start to get in issues for the long term. The short term, typically not an issue. In the long term, it's a big issue, right? So that's what we want to look at. But that is it. That is another little rant that I sometimes go on, but I want to bring it back to just understanding a holistic approach to your health, right? So it's thinking downstream. It's understanding that, yes, you may have anxiety, you might have thinning hair, you might have weight gain, but you have to ask why. You mean you can't just blame it on genetics. Sure, you can say inside of your genetic code, you are pre-programmed to this, this, and this. Okay, I believe it. I understand it. My question is always, did you have this when you were 6 years old? And the answer is typically no. So I say, well, why at 46? And nobody can, they just say, well, that's just when it happens. Well, no. I mean, did it happen for every single person in your family at exactly 46 years old? The answer is probably no. Some might have been 42, some might be 37, some might be 53. Well, then why the age discrepancy? Well, that's essentially when that rain barrel overflowed for that person, right? So, I mean, I have autoimmune disorders in my genetics. Okay, it happened when I was 17. Didn't happen to other people in my family till their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond, my grandparents and my parents. So why me at 17? My rain barrel overflowed at 17. And if you know my story, you understand how that happened with over 3,000 capsules of amoxicillin I was given for the 3 years previous to that, all the stress I was going through in my life at that time, like all different things. And then one morning, all of a sudden I get sick. Well, was it really overnight? No, of course not. My rain barrel had overflowed. Then the disease presented itself. Well, again, part of that is to do with toxicity. And that's, again, what I want to bring this topic back to today. So genetics always matter, but really it's what you're being exposed to, lifestyle-wise, heavy metals, toxicities, et cetera, that do matter, right? And again, if you want to know more about this, if this is kind of your first introduction, read The Rain Barrel Effect. It is a book that teaches you how we become unwell, gain weight, start to age faster, and what you can do to reverse that process. So let's get into it today. How heavy metals really affect the body. Now, again, we're talking downstream, right? So we're saying you have these big diagnoses of whatever it might be, okay? But what does it look like overall in your body? Just to kind of give you a picture of what it could be. We're talking about cardiovascular issues, higher levels of blood pressure. We're talking about prostate inflammation, maybe fibrocystic breast-based issues. We're talking about skin issues, skin rashes, migraines, headaches, brain fog, metallic taste in the mouth. It could be issues with the overall neuropathy, tingling of the hands and feet. It may be inability to regulate body temperature as well, cold hands and feet, digestive issues, anything to do with the hormones, blood sugar regulation, and all inflammatory-based issues such as fibromyalgia, joint pain, muscle stiffness, and autoimmune-based issues. So you might say, well, that's a really big list. And I would say, yes, it is. And heavy metals can affect all of those things. And the reason they can affect all of those things is because they cause an inflammatory nature within the body. We know that 90 plus diseases, I shouldn't say that, I should say 90% of all diseases, there are thousands of them, have inflammation as a basis for how they get worse, essentially, right? Because the inflammation actually happens typically from our body's response to the actual issue in our body, right? It finds a bacteria, it finds a virus, it finds intestinal permeability, it finds something and it goes after it, and that creates inflammation. So, but we're looking at the thing it's going after, and that's what's so overlooked in conventional medicine. They don't ask why. They honestly, there's a pathophysiology to conventional medicine. So I agree, they kind of go through the process, but they never look at the middle of the onion, right? So as integrative health practitioners, our job is to peel back the onion as far as we can with what we know in order to find out what the underlying root causes are. Those are the imbalances. And one of those imbalances are heavy metals. Now, you can test for these. This is totally optional, but you can. You can run what's called a minerals and metals test. Okay, I will link it up for you today. Today is stevencabral.com/1768. Okay, stevencabral.com/1768. Okay. So we've got that. And then there's also, and that's just a hair tissue mineral analysis. That's easy, right? That's simple. And we'll give you all the good minerals in your body as well as the heavy metals. That's a crucial one. It's part of our starter kit. Now, the other one is you can actually run a heavy metal tox screen on your body. And it's honestly as simple as, these are all at-home lab tests, a prick of the finger for a couple drops of blood, and a urine-based test. This is easy, and you mail these right in. It can be done any day of the week. And so when you mail them in, you're actually going to look at your mercury levels, your lead, you'll look at arsenic, and you'll look at these toxic metals in your body that shouldn't be there, even things like cadmium. So when we look at these, we can begin to understand as heavy metals accumulate, well, they begin to displace and disrupt our hormones, and that's what I want to talk about next. So one more piece that I wanted to add is this. Where do they come from, right? People always ask, well, where do they come from? You're being exposed with tap water, right? So if you're drinking ice cubes from places that aren't filtered water, or if you're drinking tap water, people say, oh, my tap water's clean. Well, it's probably not. It's probably not. It probably contains chlorine. It probably contains fluoride. And again, if you believe fluoride is good for your teeth, that's okay. Like, you can make that argument. Like, I could debate you on it, but I agree. Like, we can make that argument. I can make that argument with you. And that's why I keep this unbiased. But you can make an argument that consuming fluoride is good for you, right? So if you want to apply fluoride to your teeth, you can make the argument. But you can't make the argument for actually drinking fluoride, right? I mean, that's toxic to the body. It's toxic to your thyroid. We know that. It displaces iodine. It's part of what's called a halogen group. And when you look at the halogen group of the bromine, the fluoride, and others, chlorine's in there as well, you can see the molecular weight. And this, I don't want to get too deep into biochemistry, but basically, since it has a different molecular weight, it's able to displace that iodine. All right, so when we look at this, what I want to share with you is that the heavy metals, when coming from tap water, get consumed, so they go into the intestines, and they move in the bloodstream. And that is when they can cause hormonal damage as well. Or how about the cooking pans and pots and spatulas, utensils? If you're using aluminum-based pans, that's a big issue. Foods with all their different preservatives, and foods in general could have arsenic and cadmium, especially a lot of baked goods. Then we've got industrialization. We've got smokestacks and pollutants being spewed up into the atmosphere, which are raining down to our seas. And now we have more mercury coming from fish, right? So we have that to worry about. And again, I have a podcast on the fish that are highest in mercury, because there are actually low mercury fish, right? So we don't have to throw them all out, right? We can actually do better with our environment, and we can still eat some fish. Mercury amalgams in our teeth is just one more. And then cosmetics and bath products and deodorants have lead, cadmium, have all sorts of different heavy metals, and aluminum as well. So that's where we can essentially, we're in contact with it. And I know that you're able to find the ones that are more non-toxic. Again, you can go to a website like ewg.org, and you can actually look up your products and see if they contain a lot of these toxins or not. That's a great resource for you. And then you can begin to understand that there are levels to this, right? There are levels to getting well. And that's why I tell people, just straight up, straightforward, if you're not well right now, if you can't lose the weight, if you feel like you're aging at a faster rate, I'm not denying those symptoms. You feel those, and they're real. They're absolutely real. But there's always an underlying root cause, and there's always an answer. And there's typically multiple underlying root causes. Like heavy metals might be one, but so might be higher levels of cortisol, right? And they can be linked. And that's what I want to show you right now. So when heavy metals enter our body, they're going to disrupt our hormones in 4 ways. The first is with your adrenal glands. Now, how do they disrupt the adrenal glands? Well, they actually fire and stimulate the release of catecholamines. So catecholamines are essentially cortisol, right? So when you increase catecholamines and you increase cortisol, you're increasing stress hormones. So when we increase these inside of our body, not just catecholamines, I should say, others as well. So it increases norepinephrine, epinephrine, and glucocorticoids like cortisol. What happens is then we are more in a fight or flight. If we're more in a fight or flight, what happens is we begin to then slow thyroid production. We begin to slow progesterone production, predominantly in females. And that can then dysregulate the hormones of the body, causing infertility, probably at part of the worst, and then causing other issues, potentially like PCOS, as well as premenstrual based issues and symptoms as well, like estrogen dominance. So that's really important. The other part of it is that it's very difficult to turn off that HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. When you have heavy metals in the body, there's this inflammatory response, and that can affect sleep. And if we affect sleep, well, what's going to happen? We start to get more run down. We start to get more tired. Our immune system suffers. So that's a big one to look at, heavy metals affecting the adrenal glands. Up next is the pituitary gland. Now, how heavy metals affect the pituitary gland, it actually changes the secretory levels. It simply means the levels that are secreted of prolactin, of TSH, which is, so let's look at prolactin first. Let's break this down a little bit more. If we're wondering why we have abnormal levels, especially in women, of estrogen and progesterone, we have to look at luteinizing hormone, we have to look at prolactin, we have to look at other hormones in the body. If we have dysregulated levels of thyroid, not enough or too much, we have to look at what comes first, and that's thyroid stimulating hormone. Well, all of these are actually told what to do, literally told what to do by the pituitary gland. So the pituitary gland gets its orders from the hypothalamus, and the pituitary gland then signals everything else in the body, all these other glands like the adrenals, the thyroid, and the gonads as to what they are supposed to do, right? So the testes in males and the ovaries in women. So if that, again, if we are exposed to chronic levels of toxic heavy metals, we can begin to have disruption in our endocrinology, which is the hormones of our body. The next one is the thyroid gland. I know I've been talking more and more about this. Yes, the thyroid gland is affected from what? Well, it's affected from our estrogen levels. It's affected from our adrenal levels. And that's why anyone that's trying to heal their thyroid cannot look at thyroid alone. I can't recommend enough checking out the free masterclass at stephencabral.com/courses on the thyroid, or diving really right into the full thyroid health results accelerator and finally figuring out why your thyroid is imbalanced, right? Instead of just kind of masking those symptoms or medicating those symptoms. Okay, so when we have higher levels of heavy metals, I gave it away earlier in the show, you are displacing the minerals and nutrients needed in order to create the active form of thyroid hormone. So TSH is not the thyroid hormone your body uses. A lot of people confuse that, and that's totally understandable. But your body uses predominantly activated T3, active T3. And that's activated inside of essentially your liver. It's other cells as well, but mainly your liver. Now, T4 comes before that, and that is being produced from thyroid stimulating hormone. So thyroid stimulating hormone tells your thyroid to stimulate hormone production, right? And that's mainly T4. There's some T3, and then T3 is activated out of that T4. So what happens though? Well, if we have heavy metals, especially like fluoride and cadmium and chlorine and bromine, then those actually displace iodine, which is one of the crucial minerals needed in order to create thyroid hormone. So really, really important that we look, again, there are levels to this, right? We peel back that onion, you will find your answer. And the last one is this. So many issues people dealing with today. It's like 1 out of 3 people are eventually going to have type 2 diabetes, which is, I mean, it's awful because type 2 diabetes is preventable. I mean, it really is. And this is not the only factor. But when you look at toxic heavy metals, it's going to disrupt 2 things in your body: cell membrane health, as well as the pancreas, okay? The research is mainly around the pancreas. There's no doubt about it. I want to be honest with you. But inflammatory-based issues with the pancreas can dysregulate the amount of insulin you produce, which can then leave more or less blood sugar in the bloodstream, right? We don't want chronically elevated levels of blood sugar. What happens? Well, we end up with type 2 diabetes, and it's a serious issue. So, and there's a lot of complications from type 2 diabetes. Now, the other is the issue, the cell membrane health, of whether the actual receptors on the cells are going to be open to insulin, right? If insulin is in the bloodstream, but your receptors are not listening, it's not going to help shuttle the glucose out of the blood and into the cells. So the pancreas is another crucial way to look at this. And the reason why I bring all of this up to you today, and there'll be no quiz at the end, there's nothing to memorize here. You just have to understand if you're dealing with hormonal issues, you're dealing with blood sugar issues, you're dealing with autoimmune issues, there are underlying root causes. It's not just genetics. Yes, I mean, again, I go back to it. I have autoimmune issues in my genetics. I had them at 17. It's more than 20 years later. I don't have them anymore. My body is dis-ease free. None of those exist in my body anymore. I have more energy today than I've ever had in my entire life. Why is that? Well, I had to look at some of these toxicities. That was one part of it, right? There's healing your gut. There's different levels to this. But if we're not looking at our heavy metals, it's always going to be that, as they say, thorn in the elephant's foot, right? Or that straw that broke the camel's back. So we want to make sure that we're dealing with heavy metals. It's one piece of the equation. What you can do is you can go run those labs if you'd like. One's the complete heavy metal test. That's a really in-depth one. Or you can run the starter kit. Part of that is with the minerals and metals test as well. Now, you can, of course, get those at equi.life, EQUI.LIFE, or you can work with your local integrative health practitioner, naturopathic doctor, anyone that specializes in this, and they can certainly help you as well. So hopefully this was helpful today. I'll try to link up all the useful information at stevencabral.com/1768. I'm always open to your questions. Let me know. I'm here to help. This was only one podcast. We'll do many more. And of course, if you haven't checked out the Rain Barrel yet, that's going to make this make a whole lot more sense. Thank you so much. Of course, if this was helpful, please do feel free to share it with anyone else you believe it could serve. Ever wonder what the best sauna, blue blockers, sleep trackers, wake lights, salt lamps, or other health gadgets are? Or what about the top non-toxic mattresses, sheets, soaps, bath products, toothpaste, and cookware? Or would you like to know the cleanest choices for hemp parts, meal delivery services, supplements, and much more? I personally curated, researched, and now created a resource page of all of my top picks that continues to grow each week. These are the exact products I use in my own life, with my family, in my private practice, and they're the ones I trust. To find out all of my up-to-date recommendations and all the details, simply head on over to stevencabral.com/resources.